Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. I.S. Noah got his master's in playwriting and did traveling children's theater as part of his undergrad at UC Santa Barbara, where he found out that in countries like China, children's theater is used to teach math. So he took that idea and he ran with it, teaching it to elementary school kids across the country. He's published 2 books to help teachers make math fun. He's also written a number of plays, and now he's published Peanut Butter and Jelly Sandwiches from Outer Space, a 21st century fairy tale. Now, where did this come from?
Well, one thing I did frequently when I was teaching is, make up stories. We, if we're having lunch with the kids, and we make up stories and start telling them to each other. And some of them definitely struck a chord. And, I had like just the seeds of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich story that, I shared with the kids, and they always really enjoyed it. So I thought, I should develop this more someday. And when I had a larger project that I wanted to get started on, did a lot of research and decided, well, before I get going on the bigger project, I should, get my feet wet on something a little less, cumbersome. And so I decided I'd work on this story, because it's a fun story, something I knew I'd enjoy writing, that I would probably enjoy reading. And so it seemed like a natural. And boy, I did not appreciate the difference between playwriting and writing a book until I finished my first draft and took it to some workshops and got feedback. And then I was like, I need to rethink this and redo things, because everything is dialogue central. And I didn't appreciate the challenges of having 4 or 5 people in one scene in a book versus in a play.
Right.
Because in a play, you just write down who's saying which line. It's very clear. In a book, you want to avoid the he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said. And it was something I had to learn. So the rewrite of the book took much longer than the original first draft.
So what'd you come up with?
Well, it all starts, with a group of kids going into the forest on a hike, and they discover a little flying saucer inside a little cave. And the youngest of them, 6-year-old Willis, sneaks away and eats the peanut butter and jelly sandwich inside the spaceship. And a much larger spaceship shows up, and the government, men in black, FBI, the military, a Sasquatch, all sorts of fun things get involved in the story as it takes its twists and turns in different directions. And it was kind of fun because definitely the January 6th insurrection, it happened when I was just getting ready to wrap the story up. And it's like, okay, I have to rewrite the ending.
Wait a minute. How does January 6th play into it?
Well, things aren't always what they appear to be. And there's some assumptions that people make that, during the course of the story, very natural, that turn out not to be the case. For example, very early on, there's 6-year-old Willis has, wandered a little bit further down the trail from his brother and sister and friend, moping with his wiffle bat, and these bushes near him start to move around. He hears a grunting sound, and he attacks it with his bat. And everyone's terrified that some wild animal's going to jump out and kill him. And it turns out to be a science professor from their school. That's a little twist there, but there's a lot bigger ones.
Would January 6th be one of the bigger ones?
Well, yeah. At the end,
yeah.
Well, there's a rally outside the spaceship, and I can tell you that it's a rally, with the president there. He's gathered a group of people to save our Sasquatch, stop the steal of our Sasquatch. The aliens want to take the Sasquatch as a pet, and he wants to stop the steal of our Sasquatch.
Okay.
So you can imagine how that winds up.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, so that's one thing, is that if there's one thing I want to say about the story, it is a 21st century fairy tale, and 21st century fairy tales aren't only for kids. There's, I think plenty of humor in there that adults will get a laugh or two out of.
Okay.
At the very end of the book, I have a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, and I think that's really, if the story says anything, I'm sort of hoping that you can have a lot of fun and still come away with the idea. Now, I want to be precise and get the quote correct.
Okay.
Okay, here we are. If we are to teach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. And I think adults can use like lessons in in tolerance and nonviolent communication, how to settle disputes and distribute goods without, violence, is ultimately what I have to say,
Right.
And what the book has to say. It's just, I think there's entertaining ways of saying it.
Right.
So
right.
I think this country has become very divisive, and laughter can be a important tool in bringing people back together.
We can only hope. We can only hope. Now, with all of these things that you did with all of these other schools across the country, I mean, from the Bronx to Arkansas, you did this math thing. Are you able to kind of piggyback on that success with this book?
Yeah, that was a while ago, and I don't. Man, there are a lot of kids who are part of the program who, are adults now, and who knows? They may say, "Oh yeah, I remember him from the math club. I got to get that book for my kid." Who knows? That could happen. But my biggest hope. I recently went to a high school reunion. I had some classmates from Florida, and I asked them if I could recruit their help in getting the book banned in Florida, because I think that would be great publicity.
Well, is there anything in it that you think could get it banned in Florida?
Well, the political satire, definitely. I don't mention the president by name, but it's clear. The first line in the book is, it's the summer of 2019 in a reality very close to our own. So we all know who is president.
All right.
So I did decide that in the sequel, if I were to name the president, his name would be Drumpf.
Oh.
In that reality, Trump's father dropped the T from the end of the name, but kept Drumpf. And in this reality, he took the name Drumpf and turned it to Trump. So,
are you a John Oliver fan?
Yeah.
Because he told that story. That is true.
Yeah.
His that is his name.
Oh, I know.
Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think it's worth, noting, and the name Trump is not really his last name, not the one that been carried by his ancestors for many generations.
Well, you sound like you're having a great time doing this.
Well, I planted the seeds to the sequel in this story. Some of them aren't too subtle, and some of them are.
Okay.
Definitely some surprises, when you get to the sequel, make you go back to the first book and go, wait a second. Let me go back and read that.
Well, what a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
You are very, very welcome. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Fred Nurse wrote 3 books before he decided to publish the one that took him the longest to finish with Page Publishing. And you might say Freedom Shall Come serves as a warning to us all. Now, you've been writing a long time, right?
I started when I was in college, and I wrote a couple of pieces, a couple of essays that appeared in the school newspaper. And then it was writing poetry from time to time. And then I set about writing a book, which predates Freedom Shall Come. And it took me a long time to write it because of the thoughts that I had, and then learning how to put my characters together. And then I had a secondary dream to write a sequel to that book, even though I hadn't finished the first. All right, but I had a blast of energy and a thought that came to mind about writing this book, Freedom Shall Come. And this book has taken me a long time to write also. As a matter of fact, it's really 25 years in preparation, because when I first began the book, Freedom Shall Come, it was during the apartheid time period. And my thinking was, freedom shall come to those oppressed people. And as time evolved, I matured, particularly in my Christian faith. And I looked upon other ways and channels to take my thoughts. And lo and behold, one thing came after another, and what you now have in your hand was born. Let me share with the storyline.
Okay.
The storyline is this. It takes place in year 2055, so it's futuristic. And it's a family that is visited by three apostles or prophets that once lived but never saw death. They are Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek. And they give to them supernatural powers of peace, love, and wisdom, with the mandate of saving mankind from his own destruction. What they must do to save themselves, because they become the target for assassination, as well as save the earth. Now, there is an exchange of nuclear weapons between the superpowers, but these weapons are directed onto a country called Salem. And Salem is a country that was established by this family that once lived a very pleasant, easygoing life in Boston, who now live in sub-Saharan Africa in this remote place. The conflict is mankind's desire to continue in his present ways versus the biblical desire on behalf of the forces that I spoke of, the forces of peace, forces of love, and the force of wisdom, for man to correct his lifestyle and his ways. So that's really the conflict. There are several things that do happen in the course of the story, such as a major pandemic, as well as a tsunami, and you have terrorist activities that plays havoc on the United States.
Sounds familiar, Fred.
In terms of living in today's atmosphere, yes, there are many of these things are similar. However, they take a different twist. For example, the terrorist activity I speak of is a terrorist group elect to use a small backpack nuclear dirty bomb to blow up Hoover Dam.
Oh, geez.
Yes. The outcome of that, because of the pollution of the nuclear fallout, renders Colorado, California, Nevada nearly inhabitable. And the supernatural powers given to the Robinson family permits them to do a lot of things that are paranormal. For example, although you have a fallout of pollutants that would normally render California, Colorado, Nevada, and other areas inhabitable, they have the ability to suck out of the atmosphere the nuclear particles. There are a number of biblical references, but I'm not preaching in the book. I'm sharing the possibility of a real, storyline. What could happen in the future, knowing how man is not taking care of the earth, and with i.e. Climate control and pollution, mankind has become arrogant. Mankind has become filled with evil environments, evil thoughts, and evil intentions. And, now the Lord is saying, we want to change that around. And he's using these three characters, the Robinson family, the husband, the wife, and the 24-year-old son, to change this with the abilities imbued upon them by these three apostles. So I want my reader to come away with the understanding that right from the first, I make it known that there is another dimension of life that we are being controlled by to some extent, but we have no influence over. There is a biblical phrase that says, that man does not wrestle by flesh, but with things in high places and principalities. There's another dimension of life. We sometimes think of it in terms of the ad and id. We sometimes think of it in terms of our conscience. We sometimes think of it in terms of people who have died and went on the other side of life and came back and told us what they saw and what they experienced. So there's another dimension of life. And I want my readers to understand that this other dimension of life plays a strong and imposing part in how we live and the extent in which we live qualitatively.
Interesting, Fred. You're going to keep publishing?
Yes. As a matter of fact, this is my fourth book. There are three others, published in 2015, 2016.
So this is your fourth book, but it's the first one you've had published by Page.
Yes. I wanted to have a better feel of the industry, and I wanted to use a company that could help me navigate it. With my three books, I've had to do all the publicity, all the advertising, everything on my own, and I spent a lot of money, and I did not get the rewards I was hoping. Okay. So my thought was, if I use a company like Page, perhaps they can open doors for me that would normally not be available.
What are you doing locally?
As a matter of fact, I belong to groups in my church, and my church it's called Christian Cultural Center. It has a seating capacity of some 3,200 persons, and it's like 90% filled each Sunday. And I've done quite a bit of sales in that environment. Just Saturday, for example, I was at a bowling event with some friends from the church and sold like 30 copies.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah. The video that was created that is posted on YouTube has helped because I've directed people in that direction. Posting things on Facebook, and the word of mouth has been helpful. Notations that I've made in other media has helped as well. But word of mouth has done the best for me.
Great. I know a lot of first-time authors listen to the podcast because they want to hear how people who had a desire to write a book finally were able to do it. Like you took 25 years. A lot of people say that. Mm-hmm. So what was it that finally made you able to do this?
In my instance, is the finding that streak of maturity that allowed me to feel comfortable and satisfied with the final product.
Nice. Good answer, Fred.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for talking to me today.
You're quite welcome. And thank you for the call.
Cynthia Seidel lives on a 30-acre ranch in eastern Texas where the humidity was 100% when we talked, as it often is this time of year. She quit her job as a produce manager to take care of her mom and then decided to write full-time. Russian Dog is the name of her first published book. So to answer my first question, have you always been a writer?
I have not, ma'am. I have not always been a writer. I actually, last year was the first time that I wrote a book. I love to read, and my husband actually put the idea in my head.
What kind of books do you like to read?
I love Christian books is one thing, but I also love fantasy romance and just plain romance. They are my absolute favorite. So. And
your husband put the idea of a mob situation in your head?
No. No, he did not. Actually, my husband, I used to gripe at the books because they wouldn't always go the way I wanted to. I'm like, that's stupid. Why would they do that, right? Because it'd make me mad how they went a certain direction and I wanted to go another. He says, why don't you write your own book, honey? And I did. And it actually came to me very easily, and that kind of surprised me. So that's what I do. I've probably got 200 written.
200 books in a year?
Yeah, and it's the first one I've ever had. Yes, and it comes to me so easily, and I haven't uploaded them all to my computer yet, but I have 8 in that series with the Broken series. So there's 8 in that one. They're all written already. So
the Broken series, what's that?
That's the Russian dog. It's the Broken series. So there's 8 in that series that we're talking about today.
Why is it called the Broken series?
Because the women that are in there are all broken some way or another. They're abused and treated horribly. So it's kind of a where the men save them, kind of a Prince kind of thing. So that's my passion, I guess.
Okay, so tell me about the Russian dog.
She is a Russian princess for the Russian mafia, and her father has abused her entire life horribly. And she is set up on an arranged marriage to Italians mafia. And he was going to use her and break her. And when he meets her, she's already broken. So it's up to him. Is he going to hurt her more, or is he fall in love with her and treat her great? So the conflict is Volkov is the Russian mafia, and they killed one of the family members in the book. So he's going to make an arranged marriage and punish Annika, which is the daughter, to get back at her father. But when he meets her, he can't do it. The Italians are in war against the Russians, mafia. And the Russians killed their father, and the Italians are going to retaliate, is what it's about. So they plan on taking Annika, which is the Russian princess, and breaking her and sending her back to her father broken. But when he meets her at their father's estate, she's already broken. He's beat her and abused her, and there's just no life left in her. And she's scared to death, and he can see it. So instead of hurting her, he saves her. He has a brother, also 5 cousins, all men, right? And they come together, and these stories break off from each one of them. So there's stories on all of them. The whole cliffhanger is that are they going to get back at the Russian mafia for the revenge, and is Annika going to be safe, right? Because he's trying to get her back. And the cliffhangers at the end of the book is that he kidnaps Annika back. But by the time he kidnaps her back, she's already been in martial arts. She can take care of herself, and now she's grown into herself. And she escapes and captures her father and saves their brother. So it's like this big, huge. The whole thing will keep you going through the whole book.
And this goes on for
8 books, and then for all 5 cousins, and then Gio, which is the main character, and then the brother. So, and then after that series is over, it rolls off into 2 other series. Like there's a motorcycle club in there that's going to roll off into another series, and it has. I have written them already, and also into the group are there too, and it rolls off into that series. There's several brothers in that. So it kind of keeps going. That way they can keep reading into the story because you're going to want to know what happened to this character.
Did you have to do any research about the mafia and how they operate?
You're going to laugh at me, but I research everything. So on the book, and I research on what they're called, right? And I don't use a lot of their lingo, for like the Russian languages and stuff some of the other books use. I just use plain English, and then clothes that they wear and everything. I go into detail. And I look up the name of the clothes, everything that they're wearing, and then break it down into detail. The house that they bought, I broke it down in the detail of how, what it was, what kind of rockets used. But yes, I had to research everything. So, and I do that all the time, even on the books I write now.
So you've built an entire family, and each member has a history.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and it's a lot of work trying to keep up with the characters. And so I have to keep like an extra book to write everything down to make sure I don't mess the names up and mess up what they're going through, right? Because each family member has went through something, right? And they kind of save each other through the whole thing. The men and the women, right? They're saving each other because they're both broken on both sides from one thing or another.
200 books in the last year. What made you decide to start publishing?
After I wrote the book, I thought it was pretty good. And there's a lot of, and I was researching it and stuff, and a lot of people do book publishing themselves. And I wanted to get into somebody that already published my book, but I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. I'm 51 years old, and why can't they do it? And I wanted my daughters to see that I could publish a book, and I did. And I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to continue on and get these published too.
How are you making out in terms of making people aware that you're now an author and you've written a book?
Actually, Fulton Books has helped me quite a bit. They had, we did a release probably about a month ago on the book, and then we're doing the podcast thing, and I have my own website, and so we're trying to push it all that way. I thought about doing like a book signing or something.
Okay.
Because I live between San Antonio and Austin, toward the east a little bit, so I could do anything in any of the big towns there. So I thought about doing like a big book signing at one of the places my books are being published at. But yes, that's my plan for pushing it a little more. And as soon as I get some on Amazon and stuff, I think it will help my book take off quite a bit. Because I've had it, a lot of friends and stuff have gotten the book, and I have gotten nothing but 5 stars off of it. So,
Okay, well, I guess I'll be talking to you again.
oh yes, you will definitely be talking to me again. I love to write, and I hope you pick up my book. Tell me what you think.
All right. Any advice for people who want to write but just haven't been able to do it yet?
I've given plenty of advice, because even if it's not the same type of book I write, don't be scared, because I know it's overwhelming, and publishing a book's a big deal. But don't be scared. You can publish the book yourself. You can have it kind of like I done with Fulton Books, and where I pay for it and they do everything for me, or you can the traditional route. But don't be scared. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm 51 years old, and I just got a passion for it, and I love it, and it keeps my mind straight and calm, and anybody can write a book.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving me a call, honey.
The healing power of writing has been a recurring theme on this show for as long as this show has been in existence. And over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear about the role writing played in helping Treniese Gill and her family deal with tragedy, and how it inspired her to use her experience to help children deal with their emotions. She's created a children's book series entitled Feelings Schmeelings, and the first book in the series is entitled I Just Remember I Missed You. How you doing, Treniese? Can you share what happened with your mom?
Kind of like sentimental, but my mother attempted suicide when I was younger. I was 16 years old. So it kind of, triggered, journalism as like a way to kind of get all my emotions out. So, once the incident happened, it was actually kind of suggested to me by a teacher in school to just kind of write to get my emotions out. So that's what I would do. It was kind of like an escape to try to write. And my current books, they're geared towards kids who have trouble getting over emotions. It's called Feelings Schmeelings. It's kids and their emotions.
Is your mom okay?
No, she was successful 5 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, multiple. Well, she suffered a lot with mental issues, and she'd get on a certain set of medications and she'd be okay. And then, she'd slide back into her same old depressive state. So it was kind of like a back and forth.
And you think writing really helped you keep it together?
Right. It was just kind of a way to, be able to get it out without, talking to people and crying about it. It was like, hey, this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't have to explain to anybody. And because, it's kind of a taboo, right? And then you have to explain to people what's going on and, hope it doesn't get your mom in trouble. And, so it was just kind of a way for me to escape in my own way.
And don't you find too that people don't want to hear it?
Yeah, after a while, it's kind of like, okay, your life is sad, so what?
Move on.
Yeah.
When did you decide, okay, I'm going to publish these books?
It was actually suggested to me by a friend. She's like, why don't you get some of this stuff published? And I'm like, I never thought about that, So I actually started coming up with some stuff that was actually kid appropriate. And had a couple people read it, and they're like, oh yeah, we really like this. So I was like, okay, cool. I think it's something I can do.
Kid appropriate in what way?
I have 3 kids. I have a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old that just had a baby.
Okay. And so they inspired you.
Right. So when my mom did pass away, because my oldest did get to meet her, she had a really rough time in school. Really, really rough. That's what made me start the I Just Remembered I Missed You portion. So that is about a little girl who's struggling in school because of a loss of a loved one. So that's kind of what inspired me to write that. And when I actually wrote that, I let a friend read it, and she's like, oh yeah, I like this. This is really good. It'd be cool if a couple of other kids could read about this too. And, they might be going through the same thing. And so from there, I reached out to a few publishing companies with nothing heard back except for, the company that actually published it. So it was pretty cool.
So your daughter, what kind of issues was she having in school?
So she was slipping with her grades. She didn't want to do school at all. She would cry all the way to school. And then she just wouldn't do any work when she got there. She would just put her head down and just not participate.
And it was because she was close to your mom?
She was really, really close to my mom, yeah. So, and I just remembered I Missed You. It's about a little girl. They don't have names, which is something I did specifically so that way it could kind of relate to anybody and anyone could kind of fill their shoes. So it's about a little girl that she's going to school. She's having some difficulties. She's getting into fights with other kids. She's not doing well in her schoolwork. And so she gets sent to the counselor's office to kind of figure out what's going on. And her counselor gives her a couple of suggestions on things to do to kind of make her feel better. And she's looking through old photos of her missing family member and just kind of reminiscing. And the key term of it all was, make that person proud. Even though you're sad that they're missing, make that person proud. So then she starts to do better in school. And then she goes on to the next grade and she's like, I'm realizing that all things just kind of pass.
Now, are you able to get other kids to read these books?
So I went to my daughter's school and I actually did an event there where I read the books. And, I sold a few books there. I went to Barnes & Noble and I did a reading there in front of kids and sold a few books there. But then I got pregnant, so...
Oh, that'll derail you.
That kind of all put on hold.
Do you think I just remembered I missed you? Did you get any feedback?
Oh, yeah. So I actually had a few teachers that came to me and cried and was like, our kids need this. They're struggling. And a lot of us don't really know what they're going through on the inside. Yeah, it definitely helped my daughter. She reads it to me at nighttime sometimes when she picks it to read. So it's nice.
She reads it to you?
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Treniese, next time we meet, we're going to talk about your second book in your Feelings Schmeelings series entitled Moving to a New Home.
All righty.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton-Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.